Nature doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about your vacation plans, your Instagram feed, or your belief that you're the main character. Some people, however, seem to think they can reason with a 2,000-pound bison, outsmart a cheetah, or ignore a blizzard. They see a wild animal and think, friend. They see a boiling hot spring and think, spa. This video is for them. These are the stories of Karens and Kevins who looked at the raw, untamable power of the natural world and said, I know better. Some of them walked away with a terrifying story and a viral video. Others weren't so lucky. From the plains of Africa to the mountains of New Zealand, these are the stupidest moments of people arguing with nature. Case 1. The Bixi-Bergen cheetah family. On Monday, May 7, 2018, a French-speaking family, 2 adults, a woman, and a small child, were visiting the Bixi-Bergen Safari Park in the Netherlands. The park has a drive-through safari where visitors can see wild animals from the safety of their cars. The rules are simple and repeated everywhere. Stay in your vehicle, keep your windows closed, and do not get out. The dream for this family was to get a closer look. They saw a group of cheetahs resting on a grassy hill and decided the rules were merely suggestions. They wanted a better photo, a more intimate experience with the world's fastest land animal. First, the woman gets out of the car and walks towards the cheetahs, taking photos. She gets back in, and the family drives a little further. Then, unbelievably, they stop again. This time, the entire family, including the small child, gets out of the car. They start walking towards the cheetahs, some carrying the child on their arms, getting within a few dozen meters of the predators. This is when the cheetah's predatory instincts kick in. 2 of them stand up and begin to stalk the family, moving in a low, focused crouch. The family, finally realizing their monumental error in judgment, panics. The woman scoops up the child and they all make a desperate sprint back to their car. The cheetahs give chase, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The family just barely makes it back into the car, slamming the doors shut as the cheetahs circle the vehicle. The entire incident was filmed by other visitors in the car behind them, who watched in disbelief. The video went viral, and the Dutch media labeled the family stupid parents. The park confirmed the incident and stated that they have signs in multiple languages warning visitors not to exit their vehicles. They later widened the moat around the cheetah enclosure to prevent cars and cheetahs from getting too close. This family didn't die, but they came terrifyingly close. The irony is that they put their own child's life at risk for a photo, arguing with the nature of a predator and almost paying the ultimate price. They were lucky to walk away with nothing but a viral video of their stupidity. Case 2. The Custer State Park Bison Karen. On August 12, 2020, a 54-year-old woman from Iowa was part of the annual Sturgis motorcycle rally, and her group was riding through Custer State Park in South Dakota. The park is famous for its large, free-roaming bison herds. Visitors are constantly warned to keep their distance, as bison are powerful and unpredictable wild animals, especially when calves are present. The dream was to get up close and personal with a bison. The woman saw a bison cow and her calf near the road and, ignoring all common sense and park rules, decided she needed a closer look. She got off the back of the motorcycle she was riding on and approached the animals. As she got too close, the mother bison did exactly what any wild animal would do when it perceives a threat to its young. It charged. The woman turned to run, but it was far too late. The bison caught her, hooking its horn into the back of her jeans. The bison then proceeded to violently swing her around in circles. The force was so great that it ripped her pants clean off her body. She was tossed around like a rag doll before the bison finally let her go, and she fell to the ground, unconscious. Other bikers could only watch in horror. She was airlifted to a nearby hospital. Miraculously, she survived, though she suffered serious injuries. The entire incident was caught on camera by another visitor, and the video became a viral sensation. A perfect example of a tourist completely disrespecting wildlife. The irony is that she was part of a motorcycle rally, a symbol of toughness and freedom. Yet, she was completely overpowered by a force of nature she foolishly underestimated. She didn't just argue with nature. She tried to pet it, and nature responded by giving her the scare of her life in a very public depanting. Case 3. The Valparaiso motorcyclist. On February 4, 2025, a 77-year-old German tourist, identified in the media as Michael Gerson or Schultz, was riding his Royal Enfield motorcycle through the Annamalai Tiger Reserve near Valparaiso, India. This region is known for its stunning Ghat roads and its abundant wildlife, including wild elephants. The dream was a scenic motorcycle tour through the beautiful Indian landscape. But when he came around a bend, he found his path blocked by a large wild elephant. For most people, the correct and only safe response is to stop, turn off the engine, and wait for the animal to move on its own. This tourist, however, decided to argue. Local drivers who were stopped behind him warned him to wait, but he chose to ignore them. He seemed to believe he could slowly and quietly sneak past the elephant. He began to inch his motorcycle forward, getting closer and closer to the massive animal. The elephant, predictably, saw this as a provocation. It became agitated and charged. It rammed the motorcycle, throwing the man to the ground. The elephant then trampled him. The horrific event was partially captured on video by other motorists, who could only watch from a safe distance. By the time help could arrive, the man was in critical condition. He was rushed to a nearby hospital but died from his injuries shortly after. Forest Department officials and police later reiterated the warnings. Always keep a safe distance from wild elephants and never try to force your way through. The irony is that the man was riding a Royal Enfield, a motorcycle with a reputation for being tough and reliable. But against the raw power of a wild elephant, it was nothing. He tried to argue with a multi-ton animal over the right-of-way, and he lost in the most brutal way possible. We've seen a family that wanted to pet cheetahs, a biker who got too friendly with a bison, and a motorcyclist who thought he could outmaneuver an elephant. The argument with nature is clearly not going well for humanity. But what happens when the argument is with the earth itself? When someone sees a boiling, acidic, hot spring and thinks, "I'll just have a quick dip." Stick around. Case 4. The Nepal truck driver. In 2016, a truck driver was on a road near Chitwan National Park in Nepal when he encountered a herd of more than 20 wild elephants crossing the road. It was a magnificent and dangerous sight. The dream was to get an epic selfie. This wasn't just one elephant, it was a whole herd. The driver saw a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity, a picture that would be the envy of everyone he knew. The safety of his truck cabin was less important than the potential for a viral photo. He stopped his truck, got out, and walked towards the herd, phone in hand. He was trying to frame the perfect shot with himself in the foreground and the herd of elephants behind him. He was arguing with the fundamental rule of wildlife encounters: keep your distance. The elephants interpreted his approach as a threat. One or more of them charged, and he was trampled to death. Other drivers, who had wisely stayed in their vehicles, could only watch in horror. His death was later officially recorded as a selfie-related death, a grim statistic in a growing global trend. The irony is that he was surrounded by the raw beauty of nature, but his vision was filtered through the small screen of his phone. He was so focused on capturing the moment for social media that he completely missed the mortal danger of the moment itself. He wanted to get close to nature, and nature obliged in the most final way imaginable. Case 5. Colin Scott. On June 7, 2016, 23-year-old Colin Scott and his sister Sable were visiting Yellowstone National Park. They were in the Norris Geyser Basin, one of the hottest and most volatile thermal areas in the park. The ground is a fragile crust over boiling acidic water, and visitors are required to stay on the designated boardwalks at all times. The dream was to go hot potting. This is the illegal and incredibly dangerous practice of bathing in the park's natural thermal springs. Colin and his sister were looking for a place to do just that, a place away from the crowds where they could have their own private natural spa experience. They left the boardwalk and walked about 225 yards into a prohibited area. They found a hot spring that they thought would be suitable. Colin reached down to test the temperature of the water, but as he crouched, he slipped on the loose, gravelly surface. He fell head first into the boiling acidic pool. The water was over 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius, and had a pH of around 4. His sister watched in horror as he was instantly scalded. A rescue team was called, but they had to retreat due to an impending lightning storm. When they returned the next day, there was nothing left to recover. In the superheated acidic water, Colin Scott's body had completely dissolved overnight. All the rescuers found was his wallet and his flip-flops. The park's official incident report grimly noted, the consensus among the rescue recovery team was that the extreme heat and acidity of the water had dissolved the remains. The irony is that Colin was looking for a place of natural healing and relaxation. Instead, he found one of the most horrific deaths imaginable. He argued with the very geology of the earth, ignoring countless warnings, and the earth responded by erasing him from existence. Case 6. Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. On April 1, 2014, Dutch students Chris Kremers, 21, and Lisanne Froon, 22, set out for a hike on the El Pianista Trail near Boquete, Panama. They had recently arrived in the country to volunteer and learn Spanish. They told their host family they would be back that afternoon. The dream was a beautiful day hike. They were young, adventurous, and excited to explore the cloud forests of Panama. They took photos at the summit of the trail, looking happy and relaxed. But then they made a fateful decision. Instead of turning back, they continued past the end of the official trail and ventured into the dense, unmarked jungle on the other side of the Continental Divide. They were arguing with the trail, with the map, and with the common sense that tells you not to wander into a remote jungle without a guide. Why they did this remains a mystery. What happened next is a chilling puzzle pieced together from the data on their phones and camera. Between 4:39 p.m. and 4:51 p.m., they made their first emergency calls but had no reception. For the next 10 days, their phones were periodically turned on to check for signal, and multiple failed emergency calls were made. The most haunting evidence came from their camera. On April 8th, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., 90 flash photos were taken in the deep darkness of the jungle. Most are just black, but a few show glimpses of their surroundings. Rocks, branches, and a strange photo of the back of Chris's head with what looks like blood in her hair. Months later, a local woman found Lisanne's backpack containing their phones, camera, and some personal items. Further searches uncovered scattered bone fragments belonging to both women. Lisanne's foot was found, still inside her boot. The cause of their deaths has never been definitively determined, but it's clear they were lost and suffered immensely. The irony is that they were on a well-known popular trail. They were just a short hike away from safety. But a single, inexplicable decision to argue with the path, to go a little further, led them into a nightmare from which they would never return. Their story is a terrifying reminder that nature's boundaries are not to be tested. We've seen people dissolved in hot springs and lost forever in the jungle. The argument with nature is taking a brutal toll. But what happens when you argue with an entire season? When you see a summer hiking trail and decide it's perfectly fine to tackle it in the dead of winter with no gear? And we'll see one more tourist learn the hard way that you don't mess with a bison. Don't go anywhere. Case 7. The Rootburn Track Couple. In July 2016, a young Czech couple, Pavlina Pítseva and Andrej Peter, set out to hike the famous Rootburn Track in New Zealand. The Rootburn is one of the country's great walks, a stunningly beautiful trail that is relatively easy in the summer. In winter, however, it is a dangerous expert-level alpine trek, covered in deep snow and prone to avalanches. The dream was to experience the beauty of New Zealand's mountains. They had seen the pictures, the marketing, the images of a sunny, well-marked trail. They were arguing with the season, believing that the summer version of the trail was the only one that existed. Despite warnings from the Department of Conservation, DOC, about the severe winter conditions, they decided to go anyway, without proper winter gear or experience. The weather quickly turned against them. They were caught in heavy snow and mist. The track markers disappeared under the snow, and they became disoriented. While traversing a steep, snowy section, André slipped and fell down a ravine, hitting his head. He died almost instantly. Pavlina was now alone, stranded in a frozen wilderness. For 2 nights she stayed with André's body. Then she made the harrowing decision to try and find help. She spent another 2 nights in the open before finding a dock warden's hut. She broke in and found food and shelter. She was finally rescued a month after they first set out, after using ashes to stamp a giant H for help in the snow. The doc later said the couple was woefully unprepared and had ignored all advice. They had no ice axes, no crampons, and no emergency locator beacon. The coroner ruled André's death an accident, but strongly criticized their lack of preparation. The irony is that they were trying to replicate a summer Instagram fantasy in the dead of a New Zealand winter. They argued with the weather, and the weather won. Pavlina survived, but her partner died, a tragic victim of ignoring the fundamental reality that nature's rules change with the seasons. Case 8. The Yellowstone Bison Woman. On May 30, 2022, a 25-year-old woman from Grove City, Ohio, was visiting Yellowstone National Park. She was on a boardwalk near the famous Old Faithful geyser when she saw a bison grazing nearby. The dream was to get the perfect close-up photo. Park regulations require visitors to stay at least 25 yards, 23 meters, away from bison. This woman decided that rule didn't apply to her. She saw the massive, powerful animal and thought, photo op. She left the boardwalk and approached the bison, getting within 10 feet of it. She was actively arguing with the park's most important safety rule. As she got closer, the bison did what bison often do when their personal space is invaded. It attacked. The bison charged her, goring her with its horns and tossing her 10 feet into the air. The attack left her with a puncture wound and other serious injuries. Park emergency responders rushed to the scene, and she was transported to a hospital in Idaho for treatment. She survived, but she became the first person to be gored by a bison in Yellowstone that year, kicking off a season of unusually frequent tourist bison encounters. Park officials used her case as a stark warning, reminding the public that bison are wild, unpredictable, and have injured more people in Yellowstone than any other animal. They are not tame, and they're not props for a vacation photo. The irony is that she was at one of the most famous and well-regulated national parks in the world, a place with endless warnings and safety information. Yet, she chose to ignore all of it for a photo. She argued with a 2,000-pound animal, and the animal ended the argument in a matter of seconds. From cheetahs to cliffs, from hot springs to blizzards, the message is clear. Nature always wins the argument. These stories show what happens when entitlement and arrogance meet the unforgiving reality of the wild. Some learned their lesson the hard way. Others didn't live to learn it at all. So the next time you're in the great outdoors, remember to respect the rules. They're there for a reason. The perfect photo is never worth your life. What's the dumbest thing you've seen a tourist do in a national park? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for more stories of Karens versus reality. Stay safe and stay on the boardwalk.